my name's Musa Bennett. I'm Australian. I'm originally from Adelaide, South Australia. I've been over here in Perth, living here for the last 20 years. I've been a Muslim for 24 years. I actually embraced Islam in a place called Port Hedland, which is up in the northwest of Australia, mining town. It's where I first was introduced to Islam. I was working with Muslims. I was brought up Catholic, Christian, but from very young I used to ask a lot of questions to the priests, and I wasn't getting the answers which I felt were well, what I believed. And through that I sort of went away from the Christian faith. I didn't really follow anything. I always believed there was some higher power, but I didn't know what. I actually never heard of Islam before I actually went to Port Hedland. So for 20 years of my life I didn't really know anything about Islam. When I was in Port Hedland and working with these Muslim brothers, they're originally from Christmas Island, Cocos Island, and they didn't have very good English. They didn't really explain to me much about Islam. I just knew they didn't drink alcohol and they used to fast occasionally. As I got to know them better, eventually they gave me some books to read, and a lot of the books, when I went through them, made a lot of sense to me. All the religions say that they got the right path, and a lot of the religions that I had mixed with, from Hinduism through to the different Christian sects, I could see were definitely not on the right path. So when I started finding out about Islam, everything sort of fell into place, answered all the questions that I wanted to know, nothing hidden, and therefore I decided I wanted to accept Islam. Before I embraced Islam, well, my father died when I was young and I was raised by my mother, and she had a bit of a hard time with me. I sort of fell in with the wrong crowds. I was roaming the streets when I was early teens, in gangs and things. Very heavily into alcohol and crime, and from there progressed to fairly bad influences, getting in a lot of trouble. But at the same time, I always had a feeling of getting back to nature. So even though I was born in the city, I used to spend a lot of time going into the country. Some of my interests were hunting. I enjoyed hunting, fishing, diving, and through going out into the bush, into the forests, spending a lot of nights out there, looking up at the stars. I used to ask the question, why am I here? Where does all this end to? How does this all come to be? So that, I suppose, influenced me to think that there's more to life than just enjoyment and getting drunk and drugs and whatnot. It took a little bit of time, it took time, but alhamdulillah, over time I achieved giving everything up and practicing Islam as full as I could, to my knowledge. Well, what happened, I embraced Islam in Port Hedland, and then I decided to go back to Adelaide, where I come from. My wife and I went back there, and even though I knew this religion was right, I fell into the old ways again. As soon as I start mixing with my old friends, I try and tell them about Islam, and they were very, oh, well, that's good, good on you. Come on, let's go and party, So after a year or so in Adelaide, I thought, well, I could see that I wouldn't be able to practice Islam correctly by hanging around old friends. I had to make a clean break. So my wife and I decided that we would pack up and we would go over to Perth, where we knew that there was a reasonably big community of Muslims compared to Adelaide at that time. I did have a couple of friends who did embrace Islam. One friend who was a neighbour lived down the road. He could see the change in us, actually. No more drinking, no more drugs. And it also appealed to him. He came over to Perth and wanted to find out more about Islam, and we actually give him dawah, and he also embraced Islam. And then alhamdulillah, my mother also embraced Islam. So in my family now there's only one sister who hasn't embraced Islam, but inshallah we're still working on it. It was mainly breaking and enterings, gang fighting, and dealing drugs and stuff like that, weapons and things. So I never really got caught for anything, alhamdulillah. A lot of my friends did do a lot of time in prison. As soon as I embraced Islam, then I started learning about drugs, and I could see how wrong it was. And I decided no, I wouldn't have anything to do with it. And alhamdulillah, I mean, before I got married, I did have money through drugs, and alhamdulillah, Allah took it all off me through other means. So I ended up with nothing, and then I started from scratch. Yeah, I did feel bad sometimes. Some of the things I'd done, I felt bad that I'd done it, you know. But of course, I still went and done it. Sometimes, you know, because I was, you know, affected by drugs and alcohol, you do things that you wouldn't normally do. I mean, you know, like when I was drinking, I was always in trouble, always getting in fights and things. And I'd do some stupid things. Since I don't drink alcohol, I don't do those things anymore. So the alcohol was a big influence in that type of thing. And that sort of kills your conscience a bit. Well, when I first, of course, embraced Islam and I was just learning, yeah, I suppose I had that conflict where I'd still slip back into what I was doing. But, yeah, more I started getting knowledge of Islam, then the more I knew it was wrong, the easier it was not to do it. The fear of Allah, the punishment, and this, you know, helped me to stop doing those type of things. I never really believed in the God that they worship, and that what they said, you know, that therefore I never really listened to them, you know. Just the way Christianity was, I found that I just couldn't listen to them. I just wouldn't listen to them. Yeah, back then when I was, you know, doing these things, these crimes and behaving badly, of course I had a fear of getting caught by the police. Everyone has that. But you also think in your mind that you will do things so that you won't get caught. You have that possibility of getting caught, but that's a small possibility. So difference is, once you know about Allah and that He knows everything, He sees everything, then it makes you realise that no matter what you do, you can't hide it and you can't get away from it. On the Day of Judgment, everything that I've done will be brought forward. So that's the crux that actually makes me try and do the right thing now and keep away from all bad things. My faith in Allah and the fear of others' punishment is what makes me try and do the right thing now and keep away from haram and bad things. I embraced Islam in Port Hedland and went back to Adelaide, and I told him, look, I've embraced this religion of Islam, and my brother laughed at me because he thought it was a big joke, you know. And I told him, look, I'm serious, this is something which I never knew before, and I've come to know things which you know, I believe are correct and it's truthful. And once again, you know, he joked about it. My mum thought it was a bit of a joke too. She's a bit worried I was involved with some cult or some sect of, you know, she didn't really know anything about Islam. But after a while they could see the change in me. I was trying to do the right things, trying not to drink, not to take drugs, and just in that change, not to swear, they could see there's something good in it. Alhamdulillah, they accepted that I'd taken on this new faith, but they didn't really want to know much about it. It wasn't until I actually went back to Perth a year later that my brother come over and he wanted to know more about it. And I had a group of Muslims staying with me at that time, and he was watching us pray. He looked through the door into the room and watching us pray, and he saw how peaceful it looked and how, you know, down to earth it looked, and that appealed to him. And bit by bit, giving him dawah, eventually he come to realise that that is true. And out of the blue, he said to me one day, look, I want to be a Muslim. I want what you've got. So alhamdulillah, he embraced Islam. And from there he started to practice. He actually went overseas, went to India, Bangladesh. He was involved with Tabligh Jamaat for a little while. So he went for about 8 months. He was away. Ended up marrying a girl from Bangladesh. And so then he was on the road to practicing Islam, alhamdulillah. Then with myself and him living over here, my mother would come over for holidays, and we started telling her a little bit more about Islam, and we were practicing more then, and she could see some good points of it. And even though she had no religion, she was brought up with no religion, she always believed that there was a God. So when we told her that this God that she believed in is the God of Muhammad and Adam and all the different prophets, and eventually she out of the blue, she also said, I want to be Muslim. And alhamdulillah, she said the Shahada probably about 5 years, 6 years after I become Muslim. And now she still lives with us, and she's 82. She's been Muslim now for about 15 years. Alhamdulillah, she's at the moment she's just found out last year she got cancer, and it's going to be terminal. But she's, now that she's Muslim, she knows what she's looking forward to, and she's accepted it. Alhamdulillah, I feel good for her. If she dies Muslim. And now, of course, I just got one sister to go who we're working on. She's a bit of a hard case, a bit of a businesswoman, but alhamdulillah, when we give her dawah, she can see there's something there that she can't argue with. And we hope eventually, inshallah, that she will also become Muslim. And Jesus is a prophet, and it didn't. It sort of fitted in with already our, Christian belief that we were brought up with. There was nothing alien about it. So it was easy to accept that, Muhammad is the last prophet. And of course, when you start reading the Quran, and then I started learning more and looking into the science of the Quran, and I always used to pick holes in the Bible because there's so many holes to pick, so many contradictions and mistakes. And I found with the Quran, when I tried to do the same thing, I couldn't do it. Everything it said, it was backed with proof. And it's just, it sort of, Allah sort of forced me into showing me that this is 100%, from the creator of everything. No mistakes, no contradictions, dealing with all aspects of science and life. And it's convinced me. Oh, well, a lot of questions, why you can't get married. How is Jesus a God, In what way, he looks like a human being. I couldn't accept a God looking like a human being. It was just instinctively I'd reject that, And of course, when Islam says he's a prophet of God, well, that just makes sense. He's a man. I always saw him as a man. And of course, the Christian impression you have when you're young is that, if Jesus is God, then you've got his father with an old man with grey hair and all this sort of thing. This is an impression that you get when you're young and you're brought up with, But the more I saw about life, I realised that God is not human-like. He knows what everything's happening. He controls everything. I can see that. It's just it's just too complex to fathom that you could, imagine what he looks like, When I first embraced Islam, it was mainly with the Malay, Cocos Island, Christmas Island community. And their background, most of their backgrounds were, originally they come from Hinduism. And of course, I'm reading the Quran and I'm reading Hadith, and I'm looking at the people and I don't see what I'm reading. I see some very strange things going on. And it took me a long time, it took me years to actually sort out what was really Islam and what was their customs, traditions and things dragged over from Hinduism and other religions, So alhamdulillah, bit by bit, from reading Quran, the more knowledge I got and more knowledge of Hadith, then I could sift out, where they're following things, their customs and traditions. yeah, I found that it actually, can I say, it actually made it very hard at first to be a good Muslim, because some of the things that they were dragging into the religion just were ridiculous. You know, even the way I got married with all this, it was really a Malay type wedding, which I remember when I was in Indonesia, the Hindus used to do similar things, you know. And I didn't like the Hindu religion from what I saw of it in Indonesia, in Bali. So yeah, I saw that what I was reading in the Quran and Hadith, it didn't say to do things like this, you know. So I sort of stuck to myself, and I would listen to some of the learned people from that community, but a lot of the things I just wasn't very happy with. Yeah, the main thing with the with Islam, I found there was a good brotherhood there. There were Muslims amongst these people who were practicing the proper Islam, and that brotherhood, you felt very close with them. That was what kept me going in a lot of ways. You know, kept me stronger in Islam. I could see that, you know, there's a whole lot of people on the wrong path, even though they call themselves Muslims, but in that there's people who are on the right path. So I kept striving to mix with those type of people. In those days it was the more the Tabligh Jamaat type people that I did mix with. They were the only ones I could see were closer to the Quran and the Sunnah. So I tended to do a bit of work along those lines there. As I learnt the Quran and Hadith, with the knowledge that I had, I just picked out those people who were closest to what I've read in the Quran and Hadith, and followed them. And I found it was the Tabligh people. There was about 3 or 4 groups up there. There was Ahkam, there was Mufaridun, there were some other strange groups, I can't remember the names of them. And they all had their own ideas, and when you went to their classes or their meetings, you would see things there that, you know, invoking jinn spirits and doing some things which I never, you know, come across, you know. They had some very funny superstitions as well. You know, I mean, I had superstitions when we were Christian, you know. I didn't expect to come into Islam and still see those sorts of superstitions, but they were there. So I tended to stick with the people who follow Quran and Hadith more closely, and I found, you know, the superstitions and all this rubbish fell away. And I could see the pure Islam, and that's what I wanted. I don't put myself in any group. I follow the Quran and Sunnah to the best of my knowledge. And I listen to a whole range of people. You know? I don't agree with everything the Salafi people say, or the Wahhabis, or the Tablighis, or whatever. But there's a lot of good things in there that I do agree with. If someone says something, they got it from the Quran and Hadith, I can check it up. Alhamdulillah, I accept that. If they start saying things which is opinionated or whatever, then I may take their opinion on, may not. It just depends on what it's about and what knowledge, what proof I can find for myself. You know, Islam is the best religion, there's no doubt about that. Unfortunately, yeah, the Muslims are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing, and therefore they're giving Islam a bad name. They make it look bad. I've met Muslims who I really didn't like. I've met better Christians as far as their manners, their personalities, their characters are. So it's the Muslims that let Islam down. But Islam, of course, is, when you look at it in its pure form, it is, you know, there's nothing can match it, come close to it. Yeah, but it's really, I see a need for the Muslims to get their act together, practice Islam, learn about Islam, and then give da'wah to the people, especially in this non-Muslim country. We really need to live in amongst the kuffar. If we don't spread the message to them, eventually they're going to turn on us. I can see it, you know, whereas like happened in Bosnia. You know, Muslims living side by side with Christians and Orthodox and Catholics or whatnot, and eventually these Christians turn against them and just slaughtered them. I can see this here if we don't start telling people what Islam's really about. I found over the years, I've worked in all types of places, talked to all types of people, and most Australians, when you tell them about Islam, are very open-minded towards it. Once you get past that barrier that's been put up by the media, and explain them what Islam really is, most of them, even though they may not embrace Islam, they agree with you. You know? They agree that it sounds reasonable, you know? Sounds logical. And, I think if the Muslims really start doing dawah in this country, they will get a lot of people coming to Islam. Because people, I know, the average Australian are looking for something, but they don't know what. And all they see about Islam is what's happening in Afghanistan, in the Gulf War, in Chechnya, or wherever, you know. The media always portrays Islam as being bad and, you know, always fighting each other and, you know, whatnot. But when they see the reality, I'm sure that they will embrace it. So it's up to the Muslims to actually get their act together and start doing dawah properly, and let them know what it's all about and practice it themselves. You know, if every individual, you know, practices Islam to the best of his ability and shows his good manners and good character and is honest in that, then this will have a big influence. And even though I know a lot of people who are not Muslim, but they respect Muslim, you know, they're not the kuffar. They really, I have a lot of, you know, mixed with a lot of non-Muslim people, and once I've told them about Islam, they do respect Islam. And when they see things going on in the world, they're not just one-sided on, you know, like on America's side or the Western side. They can see the other side too, you know, which is good. So eventually, inshallah, one day they will become Muslim. Now, the way I come through Islam, I prefer that because, alhamdulillah, I've seen a whole range of different things in Islam, people that call themselves Muslim and their practices, and it's, alhamdulillah, it's helped me to learn what the real Islam is, and you know, alhamdulillah, I'm glad it happened the way it happened. It taught me a lot in life experience. There's a lot of things I want to do. The main things, I suppose, is while I'm living in this country is to do da'wah to the non-Muslims. Because, you know, from my background and other people, non-Muslims who have come to Islam, I want everyone to have this religion, to know about it, you know. So, yeah, I'm going to put more effort in giving da'wah and trying to you know, bring people to Islam. That's one of the main things I want to do. And also in the Muslim community, I would like to do things to get the youth doing things other than sitting in front of television and computers and whatnot, you know. I'd like to get them out into the countryside, you know, camping or fishing trips or whatever, to get them to do things active, you know, outdoors. Good training for them, you know, and get them off the streets, get them out of the nightclubs and what, because at the moment, you know, there's a lot of young guys that go to nightclubs, they go to dancing, and they're falling in with wrong friends and drinking alcohol and stuff like this, you know. So I want to make it also that I can influence these young guys to get back to Islam, practice Islam, and still they can enjoy things, you know, but more the outdoors type of life rather than the, Assalamu alaikum.
لبيك اللهم لبيك